Hello and welcome to MalMakes. Today we're going to be painting Moonside from Earthbound. This is the full version. If you're interested in the time-lapse, you can click on the card here. Otherwise, let's get started. Before I get started, there's two things that are important. First, normally I would use a black canvas for this, and I am. It's just I've gone ahead and painted over it with Mars black paint already. And why would I do that if it was already black and then I painted it with black? Well, the raw gesso canvas, the one that has the black on it, I don't like the texture of it. It's kind of lighter gray and it feels a bit more like sandpaper. So if I'm going to be leaving most of this canvas black to show like the Moonside with the neon lines, I don't want to leave that raw canvas sitting there. So I've gone ahead and given it a first coat of Mars black. The second thing that's important is I've gone ahead and done a sketch. Now, it's not a complete sketch, and I tried a few different options here, and they're just little thumbnails. So I decided I'm going to be doing a one-point perspective, as if you were Ness kind of walking the streets of Moonside. So I'm going to go ahead and work on drawing this in chalk first, and because it's perspective and I'm using the perspective rules for 1 point, I'm going to make sure I'm using my ruler and my T-square for absolutely everything. I'm going to block this entire thing in with chalk pastel pencils before I put any paint on. That way I know all my lines are right, I'm following all my 1 point perspective rules, and everything looks correct. So I'm going to go ahead and start by putting in a horizon line with the T-square here. Now the great thing about 1 point perspective is you can use a ruler for pretty much everything on it. So if you feel like you have a hard time freehanding drawing, perspective drawing might be for you. In fact, this is where I finally started to feel like I could actually draw in college. I felt like I struggled with everything until we got to drawing perspective. And then it all kind of snapped and came together for me and made a lot more sense. So I'm really fond of perspective drawing, and I think it's something that most people can pretty much pick up. There's a few rules. So the first thing I did is I drew in this horizon line. Now I'm going to find out where my 1 point perspective mark is. And because I'm doing 1 point perspective, there is only one. So my canvas is 18, and I do want to put this right in the middle. So right at 9, I'm just going to make a little dash mark, and then kind of turn it into a circle. And this is my 1 point perspective dot. The rule is, if it's not going vertical straight up and down, it goes to this dot. So if my ruler is not perfectly vertical, I'm going to put it on an orthogonal so it leads to this dot, and if the line continued, it would go through the dot. Most of this horizon line is going to get erased because it's going to be behind things, but it's there to help me kind of figure out where stuff should be, so I'm going to leave it there for now. The next thing I'm going to draw in is the sidewalk because it's kind of in front of everything else. And because I'm going to kind of have the street lead into a T intersection instead of a four-way stop, my sidewalks aren't going to go to this spot, so I am kind of breaking my rules. But once you start to know what the rules are and you've used them enough, you can go ahead and break some of them based on where things are going to go and where things line up. So I'm going to decide that maybe it's going to be 2 inches wide here, and then that's where I'm going to go down for my sidewalk. So I'll just line it up, use the ruler, and then draw with my chalk. Then I'm going to draw the inside of the sidewalk line. And then I just kind of guessed for it where I wanted it to go. I kind of decided I wanted it to be this big here and this big here. So I'm going to go ahead and measure this, which is just about 5/8, and then I'll come over here and make a dot for that, so I know that side is at 5/8. Do the same thing at the bottom, 2 3/4. And because I'm not using my rule for this part, I need to make sure that lines up perfectly and matches the other side. Now for my first building, I'm going to go ahead and put it over here on the left. And this is going to be the cafe. So straight from where this lines up here, I should use my T-square, is going to be the right far side of this building. So I'm going to line it up right where the sidewalk is, where it meets the horizon line, and draw this line up. And if I decide I don't like where it is, I can just get a little bit of water on a towel and erase it. Let that dry, and then I can redraw it where I like it. To correct the problem I had, I think I'm going to go ahead and move the building over a little bit so it doesn't start right where the line meets the sidewalk. So I'm just going to move it over, I don't know, an inch or so, and draw this line straight up and down. How tall I make it depends on where I want the roof to be. If I want it to be a shorter building, I won't make it as long, but if I want it pretty tall, I'm going to make it pretty tall, and right now it's at about 9.5 inches from the top. The other thing I'm going to do with this T-square is I'm going to go ahead and draw the left side of the building, the side that's closest to us. So I'm going to make sure my T-square is nice and square to my canvas, and I have it right where I want it to be. Maybe right about there, starting at the sidewalk. And I'm going to draw that up as well. And I'm going to draw that one a little bit taller, because what's going to happen is when I draw the roof in, the roof needs to go at an angle. So I need to make sure it's tall enough to meet that roof. So these lines are vertical, so I made sure they were nice and straight up and down. And now the roof here gets to be an orthogonal. So that means it has to go at a diagonal. So I'm just going to line up my 1 point perspective mark with the top of the far line and go ahead and draw that roof in. So you can see how it goes down to this vanishing point. I lined up this with this, and that's how I got this line here. Now, the other rule is the sides of the building that face you, they get to be square. So I need my T-square for that part. And I'm just going to go ahead and line the edge of this corner of the building down here with the edge of my T-square. I might need to move my canvas to make sure my T-square can sit straight. And I'll just draw that corner in down there. And then I'll come up here, make sure I'm square to the canvas, and do the same thing. Now to finish off this building, there's a lot of details I'm going to be doing, but I can erase this stretch of line and the horizon behind it because I wouldn't see that through the building anymore. The next building I'm going to block in is one over here, and this is the one that has the little sign out front. So I'm just lining up my T-square, deciding where I want this to go, maybe about here. And I'm starting at the sidewalk again. And I'm going to draw this as tall as I want it to go. So I'm going to make this one a little bit taller than the last one. Now this is the inner corner of the building, the one that's further down the street, kind of like this one was here. So the roof is going to be up here. And I'm just going to line it up with the dot. And then the top of this, I'm going to realize my ruler is not long enough, so I'm going to have to switch to the T-square. And then I'm going to have another building on this side of the street, so I'm just leaving a little bit of a gap between this last one here and the next one. And then I'll just draw that up. And then I have to draw the inner part of it. And then the roof is the same, it's just going in the opposite direction. And then just like I did this line here and this one, this building needs to have a horizontal line up on top and then on the bottom. So I'm just going to grab the T-square and fill that in. And then like the left side, I can just go ahead and get rid of all these extra lines, like the horizon one, through both buildings. And then the tops where I don't need these pieces up here. In the middle and the back, I'm going to be putting the Monotoli building, but I need to know how tall I'm going to make this awning where the Many Many statue sits. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out where the halfway point of each of these buildings are, because all of these are about 2 stories, whereas the Monotoli building is much, much taller. So if I fill that in, I can get an idea of where like the ground floor of the Monotoli building should be. So I'm just going to measure this line, take that measurement and divide it by 2, and that'll give me half. And if I line it up with my vanishing point here, my orthogonal will still split the building in half all the way through the front side. What I'm working on now is I'm kind of trying to figure where the Monotoli building is going to go. Now it's a diamond-shaped building that sits like right in the middle, so it's kind of weird to figure out, but this is the very middle of my canvas, and I decided I wanted the edges about 3.5 inches from the side, so I marked that in, And I'm just going to go ahead and draw those in 2. So this is where the building's going to sit on the left and the right side. Now I just got to go ahead and start to fill in some of the details, kind of make that middle part here so it has the more of a diamond feel. So I'll just measure out how far apart I want that to be, and then where it's going to go. Now I'm concerned my hand might accidentally erase something when my lines are so perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the details on the cafe, paint all my lines with a liquid white so they're permanent. Then I'll move on to another building and do the same thing, and another building and do the same thing. I don't want to have it where I have all the details on everything with chalk and they get smeared and I can't tell where my lines are. So I'm going to kind of do it in chunks, but I wanted to get this much done so I could kind of see where things go. So I'm just going to keep using my 1-point perspective rules to fill in the cafe on the face of the building. If it's not vertical, like straight up and down, it goes towards my vanishing point. And on the side of my building, it basically just goes up and down, and the horizontal lines are over there too. I filled in most of the details, but I'm starting to get a lot of this like dusty stuff that's confusing me. So I'm just going to start now and go ahead and fill in some of the liquid white. And this is just high flow acrylic from Golden and titanium white. I've decided to make this one kind of the generic building, and this one the one that has the awning with the little scalloped edge, because you can see more of this and that's more interesting to look at. So I'm going to add the details to this building and then paint it like I've done this one, and then the details to this building and then paint that one. I've taken some time to erase all of the extra chalk because some of them had still been in here, and I had done a little bit with blue chalk just to kind of guess and start to estimate where things should be. So once this dries, the top of the Monotoli building here, there's like windows, and those are marked with W's. And then the opposite ones from here to here are just some vertical lines. So I'm just going to use my T-square, draw some in, and then do the same thing with the white paint, fill that in. And just kind of keep working back and forth. Down here is going to cause a little bit of trouble because there's these columns and the doorway, and then where Manny sits, so that's going to cause a little bit of trouble, so I haven't touched it yet. The cafe needs a bit more detail still. There's some windows I haven't put in. The words need to go in, but this building's done. I might put that sign out front still, and this generic random building that doesn't have an entrance is done. I'm just finishing up some of my new details in white. On this chalk mark, these 3 chalk marks all kind of get these long oval window shapes. These spaces kind of get these horizontal shapes to separate windows. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do down here yet. There should be like a corner here, like a front corner of where the building sits, but with my composition I don't know if it's going to quite work out, so I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do there, so I've kind of just left everything alone. So I'm going to go ahead and work on filling in the rest of this, but all my side buildings are done and I'm really happy with them. The colors in Moonside are yellow, pink, purple. There's some green trees. Buildings like kind of flash on and off and change color, but I'm going to stick with those main colors, except the Monotoli building should be pink, the cafe should be pink, this building's going to be purple, but because these two are pink and they're right next to each other, I didn't really think about that. I should have like maybe switched these two or something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the Monotoli building yellow. These lines here kind of point to it and they'll be yellow also. So it'll kind of bring your attention to this big, imposing, gigantic building that's in Moonside. The cafe will be pink, this will be yellow, this will be purple, and this will be some shade of blue. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint right on top of my lines with those colors. Jackie's Cafe is going to be a pink color, so I mixed up some of my primary magenta with a little bit of titanium white and then just a touch of blue so it wasn't too orange and it was a bit more kind of a cooler pink. So just like I did the Monotoli building, I'm going to go ahead and just fill this one in pink. For the sign building, I'm going to be using some Dioxazine purple with a little bit of titanium white because Dioxazine purple is very, very dark and it's really hard to actually tell it's even purple, so I put some more white into it. And just like before, I'm going to go ahead and fill in this building. For my last building color, I'm just going to use plain cyan out of the tube because it's different enough from the purple I was using. And I do have a few different blues, but the cyan is mostly green compared to the ones I have because ultramarine and cobalt are more of like a purplish blue. So this one works really well to contrast with the purple. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill in this entire building and then fill in my name that I have down here in white. And then the last thing I have to do is all of these windows actually get bisected by black, so I'm just going to go ahead and paint a black line through all of them. Besides subdividing the windows, I'm going to take that black paint and then just touch a little of these things up. There's a few spaces where the color kind of got onto the black part of the canvas, so I'm going to go ahead and touch those up in addition to doing the windows. And we're done! We have Moonside from Earthbound. If you're interested in this piece, you could buy a print or a poster or bid on this original canvas. There's links down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find out more at supportmal.com. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of MalMakes, and I'll see you again here for another video game painting.